The next, from founder of Enrich Social Media and mentor at Faster Capital from Kuala Lumpur, we call Elton Kuah. Time's yours.
Hey, thanks,
Yeah.
everyone, and yeah, just say hi to Nina as well because I know her friend Kak Anja. I think we already heard her. That's a good one. I have this.
I'm a founder
I'm a
of
founder of
media,
Andrew Social Media.
and of course, in my role now, I'm doing a lot of capacity for the marketing shares. So I think this is one step from Regional Connect. If you guys can share my slide. So I just have a quick joke of the day. So for those that this is not gender bias or whatever. So if on COVID, please make sure that you follow men. Don't touch men and follow women instead in this context, just to keep you a safe sound. So that is one of the things that I will advocate for the safety. Next slide. And this is a brief of myself. So I am doing a lot of tech and entrepreneurship space. So a lot of times I'm dealing with a lot of agencies in government and also part of the digital economy transformation. So I think I can go to the next slide. So yeah, that's a brief introduction about myself. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, and this is the article that I wrote in normally in Medium. So some of the articles that I wrote is today, regards to COVID was written near to March 2020. And some of the Malay language, like, if I say how to market yourself ethically, or those in Indonesian slang, you all know it's called poyo. Poyo is a term that even Westerners know it's a lame. So it's say proud of your own self. So we try to say that in this context of the environment, we practice a lot of empathy in this context of people who may lose their jobs and etc. So next slide. And we don't expect you to be a sponge to listen to everything that I say. Just take the key points that what I have to learn to share. Next slide. So yeah, and for this context is if you guys can press in the chat later, it's can be 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is the attitude of like in the pandemic, I try to be entertaining as possible, and so you guys can tell me feelings what you have on my sharing in a later based on this 4 inputs. Next slide, please. Yeah, and 3 key areas of discussion. So I have this in a during of pandemic where prior to that there's an APEC summit in KL. So as a community, as a mode is one, visual meet and tech not wacky kind of a situation. So next slide. And then one of the things that I learned from this mode. So I was involved in morning community when it comes to mental health. How do I get to practice a self-well-being? And there's a scorecard that says 8 out of 10. But then the other part, which I was in regional connect with fellow ministers and also the Asian Research House. Minister Nakarim was part of the sessions that where he shares about decentralizing education, and also part of pandemic is where people can take charge and recertify themselves being education on individuals. Next slide. So that's trend number 1. And trend number 2 is when I do a remarkable work arrangements and skill sets, etc. You can actually go to next slide. Thanks. This is the visual storytelling. So one of the centers in this Kuala Lumpur, we call it in GMBB Bukit Bintang. So there's an expression of Humana where everybody practice storytelling in a small rooms, and each of the rooms has their own story. So for example, one on the left, bottom right is on the citrus, where you talk about how the Punya citrus acrylic limes comes in the picture, and that's how it comes alive. Next slide. So you can use art to monetize those skills. Next slide. And if you think of a way that how people make money at this time, so they do a mask, and one of the creative ones that I saw is he sells on Instagram, and his mask posted a picture of our hero. So for those who knows our health general director, this is Tan Sri Dr. Noisham. So I think this is a band that you can make it if you're in Malaysia. The next slide. And so the last trend is that when I talk about the store, so we have a concept called Kita Jaga Kita and support locals. So where the locals actually comes out now is they tend to have a job loss, and we tend to have buy some things online and also through the in stores. So they actually sell a lot of this personalization with the thank you notes. So I got mine in the bottom right, which is some motivation for the on the day. Next slide. And if you go to the concept where in Malaysia right now there is also a test called selfless driverless seating. So if you go to Sabah Jaya one day, so you probably come across this trend like people buy things on the go, and there's a machineless, driverless kiosk that comes in. So they are piloting this concept in the year 2021 onwards, and this is already ongoing. So next slide to my. And this is the one that I will just summarize briefly. In terms of the challenges, you see that there's a lot of people who mindset, maybe they are not sure what to do because of anxiety, and they're not sure how the situation life changes around the region. So I think in the managing opportunity part, you can actually do a lot of customer behavior. How do we see ourselves around it? And also how do you reconnect back in region 2021? So next slide, please. And this is the one that I took from Ikigai. So I actually asked permission, like I put Elmi as an example. If she likes to understand like how does she evolve in the terms of life, pandemic and etc. So take yourself what you can learn, what you're good at, and what you will express with BCN, etc. So I leave her to fill in the rest of the get to enlighten all of us and hopefully myself. So I beg the pardon for this one. It's entertainment purposes. Next slide. And this is one of the things that I share in Regional Connect last year. So I write in a piece of receipt paper, if Elmi still remembers this one. So we did an exercise with Andrew writing on this and what's the opportunity. So I write in my paper says what's happening in year 2020, 2021. I would invite those in Indonesia space, maybe they like to know more about our Malaysian startups and also ecosystem opportunity. So please connect with me if you like to know more. There's a virtual summit events in 20 March, in the March period, as mentioned. And also, if you know more about Malaysia and Starting Hub, so that's the Malaysia MSH. Next slide, please. And if you look at Uncle Google, next slide, yeah, just go towards the end. Take yourself the summary, what you feel about my short story so far. Next slide. And hopefully, if you guys to connect with me, please reach out to me on Facebook or email. And that will be my story for today. And thanks to Elmi and the rest for catching up here in Batam in person. And that's all. Selamat sore, and also thank you once again.